And joining us now, one of my favorite beat writers in all of Raider coverage. I was over at the Athletic. His name's Vic Tafur. How you doing, Vic?
Doing good, man. How you doing?
Fantastic. Are you going to get invited to Mark Davis's housewarming party when that thing's ready yet? Do you know?
I'd hope so. It's a big
Yeah,
enough place where I think the guest list will be pretty big, so I hope I'll squeeze on there.
I bet
So,
the
Slip on in the back. No one's gonna
yeah,
notice.
right. Just dress up in like like a Darth Vader outfit or something. You'll fit right in. No one will know it's you.
no, it's a
Perfect.
good
Yeah,
idea.
easy sneaking.
He'll
Um,
invite you over, but it'll be like that movie, Trading, but not Trading Places, but Coming to America. He'll invite you over, but he's like, "All right, park the cars here." And
All right.
What's the food spread at a Mark Davis housewarming party like? Like, is it all PF Chang's, or do you think he'll do something
Oh, God.
nice?
That's a good question. I know he had Big PF Chang's run for a while. I'm not
Mhm.
sure if it's changed since Vegas, but they have PF Chang's in Vegas, so I'm not exactly sure how much has changed his diet in the last couple of years.
He's a big Applebee's guy, no?
I'm
Oh
not
yeah,
sure. Is that right?
right?
I know,
Isn't he
it
just
was
him and
Hooters
Gruden?
for it was Hooters for a while.
Sure.
Then it was PF Chang's. I'm not sure about Applebee's, but maybe who doesn't love Applebee's?
Hooters open
Sure.
24 hours a day in Las Vegas, by the way.
I did not know that. That's good to know.
Well, this is why you come on the shows like this, Vic, to learn the really important stuff about Las Vegas.
Deep dive.
So how rough has it been covering the team during COVID? Like instead of being like in the locker room, talking to the guys, bumping elbows all the time, like I bet you never thought you'd wish you'd see NFL players in towels as much as you do right now.
Yeah, for me, it's a killer. I mean, that was one of my might be my favorite part of the job is just being in the locker room and shooting stuff with the guys and just like you get to know them pretty well and kind of not only the star players but like the back of the roster guys. And so now that access is all gone. Now it's strictly who they give you at the podiums after practice and after games. The whole dynamic has changed, so it's not good. They definitely the team cannot all teams cannot control the message a lot better, and it's hard to find out really what's going on sometimes. So it's been a rough adjustment. I'm still making it, but yeah, it's not been good for me.
You got to like build some leaks, you know. You got to cultivate some scabs or something that are like break ranks and talk with you.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works because you can't get how would you meet those guys? You would never meet
Yeah.
them because the place is locked up. So luckily, I still know like I want to say like what not even half, probably like 1/3 of the team from a couple of years ago from the locker rooms last open, but it has changed a lot. So like all the new guys, I don't know very well.
Who do you miss the most, like in the locker room?
Just talking to guys, like not so much like you could just have conversations about like some of my best talks have been like on slow days, if you're like, or just talking to guys about whatever, kind of get to know what makes them tick, family stuff, or just kind of because so much about football is just it's cut and dry. Like this guy was drafted here, this is supposed to be good, he's not supposed to be good. And it's kind of what you kind of learn the layers behind people. That's kind of always been my favorite thing, is kind of to know what makes everybody tick and their backgrounds, and just kind of it's also kind of cool to see the personalities kind of mesh in the locker room. Every year, the faces change, so different leaders emerge, and you kind of get the sense of that dynamic in the locker room much more than you do. Like right now, it's pretty much these guys are the captains because we say so, and you're like, okay, but you don't really know what's happened.
Why? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of, but so yeah, just the whole interaction with guys in the locker room, just kind of just you learn more about the team just just chatting with guys than you do from any kind of press conference.
So heading into week one coming up Monday night, let's say at this point a month or two ago, what's the biggest surprise for where the team is at right now, whether it's personnel, scheme, anything like that? Like what right now you thought a month ago, like, wow, I would never have thought that this would be the case right now?
It's a good question. I think my biggest doubt coming into camp was the offensive line. I thought they obviously got rid of Rodney Hudson, Gabe Jackson, Trent Brown, some pretty big names. So I thought this I wasn't sure how these young guys and the kind of the guys who were backups last year were going to click, but they've been good. I've been kind of impressed by them. I think that Tom Kimball does a good job. So I think, I think Incognito, if he's healthy, will be fine. They got Denzel Good, who I think is a good player. He's been able to step up to be a starter this year. And they got John Simpson, who I think is probably ready for a bigger role. So I think the guards are fine. Colton Miller, obviously, is a good tackle. So Leatherwood, I think he'll have some hiccups, just growing pains in the pass rush, but the run game stuff, he should be really stout in terms of he's a very powerful guy. So I think the run game should be fine. So that's not as big a concern as I thought it was going to be going into the opener.
Being at training camp and the practices and those joint practices with the Rams, what was your biggest takeaway? Because fans can't be there, like we don't get to see any of that. Like what did you see there that you think was like your biggest takeaway leading into week one?
Just that they were obviously they were really fired up. I think I'm not sure if the Rams were not as fired up, but definitely it seemed like the emotional edge. And Gruden definitely wanted to win the practices, and that kind of the players sensed that. So definitely there was a very fiery group. And you obviously see some confidence. Definitely they have confidence in the defense. Now, last year there was no such thing, but I think they have confidence in this D-line. This rotation of like 8-9 guys is going to be pretty strong. They have confidence in Mayock, and they have confidence in some of the younger guys taking a step up, like Abram and Mullen. So I think there's definitely some confidence in defense that you didn't see last year. I think they came across in the practice. Corey Littleton was chirping a lot, which is probably both because it was his former team, but also I think he's more comfortable now under Gus Bradley than it was last year. Last year, I think he was more of he's having a hard time like reading and reacting, where this year he's just I think ideally he's going to fly around and not think about two things too much. So he was a really good player 2 years ago, and last year he wasn't. So that'll be a big improvement for the Raiders if he can go back to the guy he was 2 years ago.
Should John Gruden win an Academy Award for pretending to be mad at all the fights at the Rams joint practice? Because he's got a screw loose. He had to have been pumped, making bets with other coaches.
You know what though? He was mad because I'm telling you why. So he like the first day, obviously the guys were like all these near fights and players getting in each other's faces, and he was definitely yelling the whole time. He was into it. He was definitely the whole sideline was really charged up, and they got what they wanted out of that day. Like, you know what? We came, we showed, we competed, but. Yeah, that was enough for him. The next day, he really wanted to calm down. He had like a script of plays when they go over. Like for him, these 2 days were kind of like the preseason. Like he didn't play anybody in the season games. These 2 days were like kind of his dry run. Steal plays, work, see the personnel, make things, play with some things in terms of scheme. So after he told the guys to calm down, and I guess a lot of times once you guys are already turned on, you can't turn it off. It's hard to get the motion back down sometimes. And
yeah.
So. But he had like a whole script, like another hour, I think it's maybe 40 minutes of plays he wanted to go over in practice. So they have to cancel practice and not run those plays, is why I think he was upset.
It had to be the offensive thing that pissed him off. I didn't get all my plays in, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he and McVay talked about like that. They talked all the coaching staff were working together about what they wanted to accomplish. So that both teams had a script about things they wanted to get done and things they wanted to see. And so, when you only have 2 days that's your whole preseason, and you lose 40 minutes of it, then I think that's why he's upset.
Well, the Rams too don't play anybody in the preseason either.
Right.
They haven't for a few years now. So yeah, right. It would have been. I can see where it would be difficult for both head coaches.
Right. I think the Rams were never like that, mostly charged up. I think it's just different. Like when you come out to your own practice and you're just like, the team's coming in, that's great. But I think the Raiders are like, you take a bus over, the guys are, pads, or you kind of get that John yelling at you. So I think the guys are definitely more fiery coming into that practice than the Rams were. It's a different mentality. The Rams are obviously a more established team. They have more success. Not a lot to prove. They're kind of like, I think that, preseason, no one gets hurt. Let's kind of go through this, make sure we get our checks and balances. And whereas the Raiders are trying to establish an identity, trying to get a little, last year was disappointing, especially from a defensive perspective. So they want to show they have some juice this year.
You clearly still have some insight what's going on in that locker room, because your Nelson Agholor story from earlier in the year about he blew up in the locker room after a Dolphins game, I believe, right?
Yeah, that was an awful game with the face mask.
An atrocious game, and he called out the team for not having leadership and all these things. Really insightful piece you wrote. What was the blowback from that article? Because you saw a couple players kind of chime in like, well, that's not exactly how it happened, but they weren't very specific. Like, what was the blowback like from that story?
It's funny because the first reaction, like I remember I talked to, I think Max Crosby talked to him a few days after that story came out, and he was like, oh, that was BS, man. That story was BS. I'm like, really? He's like, well, the fact they told you, the fact you heard about it was BS. Like the fact that someone leaked it was BS. So I just think that's the natural reaction. I think, to me, it wasn't that negative a story. To me, it shows that he had established himself as a leader, was comfortable enough. He wasn't not a very loud guy in general, but to come out and say that kind of stuff and kind of get the team to realize that this wasn't acceptable. He has won a ring before. He knows what it takes. This was not cutting it. This collective effort and collective leadership, and I think the big word was accountability. There was no real accountability from not just players, but also from coaches and from everyone, he thought, in the whole organization. So I thought it was a good moment. And I thought the team responded pretty well. I think for young guys like Max, who wants to be a leader, and Derek Carr and Darren Waller, you learn from those kind of things and you kind of grow, because those guys are going to be the leaders this year. So I think I thought it was an important moment in the season. It kind of showed like what some guys thought had gone wrong. Like they had a great start and they kind of fell apart. And I think depth is the obvious reason you look at, maybe why they didn't have the
100%.
depth. But also, I think the leadership definitely fell short, and some of the, not just the players, but also from the whole building. So I think I thought it was a big moment in the season and kind of showed where things kind of went downhill.
Yeah, there's nothing Nelson Agholor could have said in that locker room that I didn't scream it into my TV 10 times as loud and 10 times worse. I mean, if you can't get fired up and pissed off after the ending of that game, like, where's your pulse as a football team? Like, I'm with you. Like, it wasn't this like, oh God, this disgruntled team and they're falling apart. It's like, hell yeah, they're pissed. Like, did you not see how that game ended? I mean, have you seen any sign that the back-to-back failures and falling apart late in seasons that we've had the last 2 seasons, depth, like you mentioned, of course, a big issue, but the leadership part, have you seen any signs that is starting? They've gotten the message that back-to-back seasons fell apart. We need to fix something. Like, have you seen anything that points towards them learning their lesson?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was they replaced the defense coordinator. Gus Bradley came in. Gus has been kind of a breath of fresh air. And I think I mentioned Max. Max definitely has become a leader this year. I think also Ngakoue, those two have really connected in a kind of special way. They're kind of pushing each other and pushing the whole defense. Every day of practice, they're kind of setting that mentality and kind of that sense of urgency that this has got to be done now and this is the way you do it. And I think the leadership on defense definitely gotten a lot better. I think that was probably, you look at what Nelly was talking about, the offense was fine last year. The offense, I mean, wasn't the problem last year. The defense was what cost them those 3 games on the stretch and the Miami breakdown. So I think the defense accountability especially need to be better. And I think there's signs this year that it will be.
What do you
think? My big issue with the leadership, and hopefully, like you're saying, it's changing, is I read an article that said Max Crosby was saying, oh, well, this happened. We had a breakdown last year, and it's not going to happen again this year. Now, wait a second. It happened your rookie year, and then it happened again your second. So you didn't learn from it your rookie year and going into the second year. You're going to learn from it now because it happened 2 years in a row. But you're saying that it's a lot better leadership this year.
Yeah, I think so. And also, I think that's what you got to say. Every training camp in the NFL, every team is like, "This is the year we got to figure it out." We have the person every year. You have to believe that. And I think with the Raiders this year, I think it all comes back to Gus. I think Gus Bradley, not just in terms of the scheme. I mentioned a simpler scheme, not as much thinking, hopefully for players, but also just a personality difference. I mean, Paul Guenther was kind of a really kind of a hard edge, kind of, I don't want to say grouchy, but definitely like
gruff. He was
gruffly like a guy, 24/7 football, kind of no smiles. Where Gus is like the most positive person I've maybe ever met in my life. Like Gus is like cannot get him in a bad mood. The players,
Tony Robbins without the teeth.
It's unbelievable. Like, I mean, Derek Carr is like Derek Carr, Mr. Sunshine. I was giving Derek a hard time. Like, you are no longer the most positive person on this team. It's not even close. I said, he's yeah, you're right. It's not close. I mean, Gus is on another level. So I think that's good for them. I think every year you want to say it's a clean slate, fresh start. And this year it really is. With the defense, again, a new guy, a new defense, a new kind of attitude, kind of just like, let's keep it loose. There's accountability. I mean, Gus will yell at you if things go wrong, but he'll definitely turn around and smile at you and say, hey, this is why I did that, and this is what we're doing. So it's all very positive, I think. So it's a nice for them at this point where they're at, for all the young guys. It's a good sequence.
Well, that's what I said last season when, they fired Paul Guenther in this whole offseason when they were searching for their next defensive coordinator. It was like, that has to be the best possible job in football because you're taking over the worst defense in football. Like, you only have one place to go and that's up. Like, you can't possibly be worse as a team. They get Gus Bradley, who's so respected. What's a realistic expectation for this defense's performance this upcoming season? Because it's been a bad defense for 20 years. Like, this isn't just a Paul Guenther problem. It's been terrible for decades. What do you think is a realistic expectation for the defense to perform this season?
People actually forgot. It got worse when Guenther got let go. Under Marinelli, it actually got worse last year. So it wasn't totally Guenther's fault. I think there's definitely some personnel problems, and they spent a lot more money this offseason. They got some guys, and Ngakoue being the big one. So I think that the biggest sign, the telltale sign for me, will be the sacks and pass rush. Like, they should have a good rotation, and Max and Ngakoue are definitely maybe the best combination of pass rushers they've had in a long time. Plus, the guys backing him up. Karl Nassib looks good this preseason. He looks like he's the guy who had 6-7 sacks a year in the past. So he definitely looks like he'll be a good rotational guy in terms of the pass rush. And even Klee can get to the quarterback in a backup role. And they got Malcolm Kuntz, kind of the young guy, like the fresh leg. So there's definitely enough talent.
Gerald McCoy looked really good.
Gerald McCoy looks good on the inside. So they got some guys who can get some pressure. So to me, that has to be the key. I mean, I love Mayock, the rookie safety, but I think the pass rush to me is key because I'm not sold on the run defense. So I think the run defense to me is still a question mark. So, so the pass rush, so they can establish themselves, create pressure, and make things easier for the rest of the defense, then you got a shot.
Are you as surprised as me that the Karl Nassib coming out of the closet story, like, just completely died in like 18 hours? Like, I thought it would be like the biggest story of the offseason. It would be like all over every like outlet, non-sports media would cover it. It'd be this huge story. It was like it didn't even make a 24-hour news cycle and just died. I was like, that's kind of shocking.
I think that's by design. I think because Karl's not a talker. So I think Karl made the announcement on an Instagram post, and then he didn't say anything after that. And then finally talked to you in the press conference, I want to say like maybe 3 weeks ago. That was the one time he's talked to anybody. Like, I'm sure when this whole, like you said, when it came out, people were excited. Like, it was PR firm was reaching out to people. They wanted to get him on Oprah on Good Morning America. They all these big plans.
Sure.
But Karl's just not a talker. He's just like, you know what, this is what I'm doing. I had the post. That's pretty much all I wanted to say then. And then the 5 minutes or 10 minutes he talked to us that one day, he was good. He elaborated on his background when he went through the struggles, why he thought it was important. But that's pretty much it. I think he's pretty much done talking about it. He wants to focus on football, which I'm sure Gruden loves. So I think you're right. There was the expectation to be a much bigger deal. Like, I'm sure Oprah and, like I mentioned, all the talk shows were dying to talk to an NFL guy who came out, but it's just not his agenda. He just doesn't. He's always been a kind of a quiet, quirky guy, and that's not going to change because he came out of the closet. So I just think I think he's happy with the way it's turned out. Yeah,
and obviously, whoever wants to, come out, it's however they want to do it is up to them. Clearly, it's their journey, but like, it's just as a fan of the Raiders, I couldn't think of a better way for him to do it. Right? He waited until OTAs were over. There's a lull before training camp. Quick post. Don't want to be a distraction. And just as a good guy, like, he made the whole focus about this organization that helps, kids. I had no idea that gay teenagers are 4 times more likely to kill themselves. I know that now because Karl Nassib made that the focus and not himself. If I was a gay player in the NFL and I came out, I'd have a book deal ready. I'd have a movie ready.
Oh yeah, you sell out.
I'd be on the whole street. Like, I'd be all me. I'm going to cash in on this. Karl Nassib did the opposite. He's like, let me help people who need it. Let me take the focus away from me onto the team, and let's just play football. It's just like, giant hat off to him as a Raider fan, the way he handled it.
Yeah, he's supposed to be one of the guys. I think he's different. He said why he did what he did. But if he does talk again, whenever it is, at some point, I'm sure it'll be about the project, not about himself. It'll be about these kids and what they need, in terms of some help. So I like you said, it's not going to be a big story the rest of the year unless he decides to change his path, which I don't think he will.
How do you think Mike Mayock is enjoying or not enjoying his job? Because it just, again, that dynamic, and like you said, you guys can't be in the locker room like you used to. You don't quite have your finger on the pulse as much as you would in a non-COVID season, but it just, I just get this feeling from Mayock, like this isn't what he signed up for. Gruden is the czar of football over there with the Raiders. I don't know. How do you think Mike Mayock's feeling about his job these days?
I think he's fine. I think Mike knew exactly what he was getting into. I think here's a guy who's at the top of his field, like the draft guru, NFL Network, everybody referred to him and kind of like asked him questions. He's kind of like the main guy for, like, he surpassed Kuiper, I think, in terms of popularity, I think, at one point. So he always wanted to be a general manager. He wanted to do something different. And this was his one chance. It wasn't like a lot of teams were looking for, that kind of guy to be a general manager. I think it was a very, very niche opening. So I think he knew exactly what it was that John had. Final say in personnel. He and John knew each other pretty well. The personalities are decent match. They're both outgoing kind of football guys who live and die with the film. Mm-hmm. So that part's fine. So I think that sometimes, I'm sure everyone gets frustrated with their jobs. I'm sure Mike gets frustrated at times with maybe he doesn't get the guy he wants, or things don't go the way he planned, or obviously in the case of Tanner Muse, that was a huge debacle. But I just think that he knew exactly what he was doing. When he got this job, he enjoys the parts of it that he likes, like the scouting of players, going to games and bowl games, talking to scout. That part, he loves that part. Building up a binary of players and the bios and all the scouting information, taking it to the draft room, meeting with John. And I think that part, he loves that part. And there's some quirks I'm sure he'd love to change in an ideal world, but he wasn't getting a general manager job in an ideal world. This is the job that was there for him to take. If you want to be a general manager, this is what you had to deal with. And he knew that coming in. So I think he's fine. I think obviously he's frustrated. He wants to win. They all want to win. So I think everything points to this year is kind of a do or die year for him and for a lot of people in the organization.
What do you think of his job? What do you think? How well do you think he's done as general manager?
Well, I think he's had.
It's hard to say, right? Because you don't know who has all the control and who's doing what.
We know who has control. It's just how much input.
How much input?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to point like which guy. It's clearly his guy, which guy he wanted, got overruled for. You kind of figure it out, but you don't know for sure. You're not in the room, so you don't know exactly what's been talked about. But I think they've had some big misses in free agency the last few years. So I think that's been a major problem for them. And this year, we'll see if they got it right this year. But also they're missing some draft picks. I mean, we mentioned Klee, we mentioned Hughes, third-round picks 2 years ago. They traded Bowden. So I just think they've had some misses on both the draft and free agency, which don't if they don't make the playoffs this year, they'll come back on him. That will be why he leaves, because you know what? We missed on these guys, and that's why it's time for you to move on. So that will be what happens. But I think there's some good things also, but some positive moves. I mean, Darren Waller was one of the great finds in the NFL. He's a great contract. And Incognito's been a good addition. There's definitely very positive things. Like Agholor was a great signing last year. I think Zay Jones is a guy that could surprise people this year. So that definitely does some good things also. I think Mayock, trading up for Mayock in the second round, I thought was Mayock's best move since he's been here, I think, in terms of being a general manager. So there's been positives, but I think if they don't make the playoffs, all the negatives are going to outweigh those, and that'd be the reason why they split up.
Yeah, I think those positives are something you can hang your hat on. But when you look at that 2020 draft, you have 5 picks out of the top 100. Top three round picks. You want to get starters out of there. And you got 2 guys who are still unproven as starters, and 3 guys, 2 that are not on the roster, and another guy who might not play very much. That you got, and Arnett.
And we also say things we regret. And Mike was kind of feeling himself before that draft, saying, "Oh, we got 3 third-round picks. That's like stealing. That's like you're giving me great players, and then those 2 of those 3 guys are no longer on the team, so he wasn't actually stealing anything." So that quote will come back to haunt him also, but. We all say stuff we regret. So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, the whole
I do it every week.
This whole rebuild was based on these draft picks. So, like we traded Khalil Mack, got all this draft capital, and so far you haven't seen great results. I mean, you got like Max is a great pick. He's like 4th round, Renfro 5th. They've got some good picks later on, but the key guys in the top 3 rounds the last 3 years have not been, for the most part, impact guys so far.
What do you make of the alleged IRS investigation of the front office? Like, there's the report that it's this, they're being investigated. They hired an attorney to investigate themselves. Like, what are you hearing? What do you make of all that? And do you think it has any effect on what happens on the field on Sundays?
I think it has no effect. I think players totally tune that stuff out. I think I don't know what happened. I think the only guys that really do are Mark Davis, Mark Bourdain, and Dan Ventrelli, who now is the president, former lawyer, and now interim president. Probably will keep the job on a full-time basis. But those 3 guys know exactly what happened. The rest is just all rumors and conjecture. And the only way it will come out is if it comes from a league source that something's going on, or if it comes out through a legal, if there's a legal paperwork trail at some point that things proceed. But I can't even speculate. I know some people speculate what's been going on, but I don't know. Those 3 guys aren't talking, and so I wouldn't be comfortable saying anything really because I don't know what happened.
So we got the Ravens coming up Monday night. They're like a -220 favorite, about 2-1 favorites. I think but they got a lot of injuries, right? A bunch of running backs injured. Right. I think we're kind of built to like learn about our run defense on this game, right? Like this is like a rough game to open up, but at least we'll know exactly where we stand run defense wise. What do you make of the matchup, and what are you looking for the most?
Yeah, I agree. I think to me, my biggest question mark has been the run defense. So we'll see exactly just how big an issue that is. The Ravens are very good defensively, so that also will be a good test for guys like, these young receivers, Ruggs and Edwards, what they can step up and do this year. I think the O-line will be challenged. So it'll be a great test to see exactly where they're at. And I think it's a little tough because none of these guys played in the preseason. That was by design. John didn't want to risk injuries, but it's a little rough to be sitting, just kind of to go from 2 workouts with the Rams and not really getting in games to going against the Ravens on national. They're a very physical team, so It'll be a great test. I mean, the crowd should be something, on a different level in terms of the first game in Vegas with fans. So it should be. I'm looking forward to it. It should be fun.
What kind of home field advantage do you think we'll have? Because part of me is like, all right, all these casinos are like buying all these tickets for high rollers. People are going to come out of town. Like when you see, your away schedule of the other 31 teams, when are they going to be in Vegas? Who doesn't want to go to Vegas, right? So I'm thinking, oh man, maybe it's going to be a bunch of non-Raider fans or out of towners in there. But then I look at the Golden Knights, who like all my hockey buddies are telling me they have maybe the best home ice advantage in all of hockey because Vegas is so raw for them. Like obviously we haven't had fans in the stadium yet for a Raiders game. But like, what's your feel? Like, what kind of home field advantage do you think the Raiders will have?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the Golden Knights, I mean, one of the key things was they won. They won right away. Yeah. So I think people who came in.
Spoiled Vegas fans.
You go to the game, and if you're a Raiders fan, obviously you're in. But otherwise, you're going for the atmosphere, you're going for the vibe, you're going for the party, kind of like it. And you want to be part of something that's kind of special. So I think if you go to a game and say the Knights are winning, these guys are really good. You kind of you join the rest of the crowd and cheer. I think you make fans. I think the Raiders will be the same way. The Raiders, they play well Monday night. They get off to a good start. I think people who were on the fence who were kind of just going to see the event will cheer for the Raiders. I think the energy will build. So I think it could be a very special place. But there's also, like you said, there's also a chance that all these casino seats and we got fans from other teams coming in, and it's definitely a more, not sedate's the wrong word, but a different vibe than Raiders games in the past. So I think winning and being competitive will be a big part of that.
I think they're going to be super loud because, look, let's just be real. These luxury suites don't make any noise anyway. Those are the ones making noise. The noise is all on the top rung. That's where the noise is coming from. So
well, normally where the cheap seats are, but there's no cheap seats at Allegiant Stadium anymore.
So. They're getting cheaper. They're getting
cheaper, right? Right. Thank you, COVID. And that the immunization rule was great for driving those ticket prices down. I don't have to give away my kidney now to buy some tickets. Appreciate it. There you go. His name is Vic Tafur. Check out his work at theathletic.com and follow him on Twitter at Vic Tafur. So it was great. Thanks, Vic.
Thanks,
Vic. Hi, guys. Thanks a lot, man.
Hey, Windbags, if you want Darren Waller to catch 20 touchdown passes this season, don't be afraid to click those subscribe, like, share, and comment buttons. Plus, your comment could be featured in the next What Up, Windbags?